Well, hello there, darling. Now, this is freaking exciting because this is the very first episode of my very first podcast ever, which is called the Mystical Artist Podcast. And so, I want to take this opportunity in this episode to do like an introduction of what the podcast is all about. So, its topic is going to be what is a mystical artist? Because this podcast is oriented, is I don't have the other word, and I'm not on video here, so long pauses I think are very awkward on podcast. I'm just trying it out. Anyway, are oriented towards mystical artists, like artists, but not any kind of artists are going to enjoy this type of content, and not every artist is going to be up for it. So I will be talking about what a mystical artist is. My name is Emanuela. I'm your host. You may sometimes call me M. And you can find out more about me on my website if you are not already there listening to this podcast, Unique Art and Studio. Now, I'm an artist myself, and I translate energy into visual and written artwork. So what I do is a combination, is a perfect synergy between art and energy. And because I've discovered this in myself, I wanted to share it with others. And this is basically like in one sentence what a mystical artist is. And is an artist that has energy at its base, at its foundation. And that's where it all builds up. It's not about just, because artists have this tendency of improving on the technique that they have, on some kind of a skill, some kind of equipment, learning new software, and all of those are great, but they are just superficial. They are on the surface. And the mystical artist is the artist that actually goes deep within him or her and goes into the energetics of it, goes into their own self-expression, and that is what guides their actions. Whatever what I just call superficial actions may be on the outside, they are not superficial anymore as long as they come from your intuition, from within. They are superficial if they are just things that I'm supposed to be doing because that's what people in my industry do. So we got just a bit ahead of ourselves. I wanted to also mention that this mystical artist, mystical is not by mistake written with an I, it's not with a Y. And it's because it's coming also from the word mist. So it is about being mystical, which kind of translates, like goes towards the occult, goes towards what is magical. And magic is something that's unseen. It's not something that is very visible up front. It's not, I'm not sure if tangible is the right word, but it's not the thing that you see. It's about depth. It's about seeing what's underneath. That's the whole thing. That's what the word mystical represents. But then if you take the word mist, which is, I think, my favorite form of water, it ties so well actually with the mystical aspect of it, because it's also kind of, the word shady came to mind for some reason, but that's not a word that people associate with something good. Like shady is a bad thing. But actually, this is a good opportunity to say that there is no good or bad. But that word came to mind. And it can be shady. It can be, again, unseen, and you have to dig deeper into discovering what's underneath the surface. And it's also my main program, working with other artists to tap into their true talent, their true self-expression, is called Chaos Artistry. And this ties in with chaos, which is the first step into this training, where we become comfortable in being in the chaos. Meaning that we ditch the rules, we ditch the things that keep us comfortable in having a clear path just because that's how it's supposed to be. That's the path that everyone goes on, and it's just clear. But if you take all that shit out, all that you should, all those rules, all of a sudden you're gonna feel lost, like in the fucking mist, like in deep chaos, right? And that is so beautiful, because that's when you actually start to realize that the power and your anchor is within you. It has nothing to do with what's on the outside. And so me rambling about this is very important, because this is at the essence of what this podcast is going to be about. Bringing you more and more into the chaos, into the mist, because I'm going to be taking terms or just concepts that are very closely related to art, artists, and creative industries. And I'm going to make you see them in a totally different way. I'm going to tell you how those are myths, how they are actually those rules that you thought, and even things that you thought were good for you, are not. And telling you this is going to shake you. It's going to fucking shake the world you live in, because what you thought was true is not. And that's what's going to send you in the mist. Like, what the fuck? What do I do now? But then I'm also going to give you another perspective of how things can be, because things are not one way or the other, are in such a way, in the way that you choose them to be. But you first need to be able to see beyond the illusion, beyond what just seems to be. You want to look deeper than that. And only then, when you're not attached to things being one way or the other, can you actually choose and make a responsible decision and own it. And that's when you actually step into your sovereignty and start to master you as a human being, or better said, beyond the human, and you as an artist. Whew, that got pretty deep pretty fast, and we got into this philosophical thing. And things are gonna get like this. Things are gonna be philosophical, and we are gonna go down the rabbit hole, so to speak. Just give me a second. Drinking some water. But in the same time, you may also, like, it's not practical, like practical oriented. You're not gonna have like projects or anything. It's a podcast at the end of the day. It's not a class. But every episode is gonna shift your perspective on things. It's gonna shift your reality. And each episode is also gonna have already action steps, like not necessarily specific action steps that you have to take, but each episode is gonna speak something in particular for you, for each and every one of you listening. And there will be action steps coming up for you personally. So every episode is going to give you a chance for you to shift your energy and shift into your next level. And that is the purpose. And that is why, and I think this is very interesting because I haven't heard of too many artists that focus on the spiritual and energetic part of the journey. So mostly we are going to be talking about, again, terms that are very well known in the arts industry, and maybe feelings or whatever concepts that you've heard of that are mainstream and that they are very like so well defined, so to speak, like everyone knows what to think of when they hear those terms. But we will be talking about them in a totally different way. We will be talking about them energetically and how they actually function. Because everything that is in the material world is just an effect of what's happening in the energetic world. Okay, mystical artist. The mystical artist is the artist who is not even willing, who is excited. Excited is not really the best term because it's such an intense but fleeting kind of emotion, but it's like really intrigued by looking beyond what's just beyond the surface of things. And don't get me wrong, the surface is not wrong. Like people talk about appearances, maybe that's going to be an episode. Because what's at the surface, what the appearance is actually a reflection of what's underneath. But you want to, in order to know the whole truth, you want to dig deep into it. So where was I? Just give me a second for another sip of water. Yes, so the mystical artist is the artist who is intrigued and wants to look beneath and is very much into symbolism. And the mystical artist is also the artist who wants to ditch creating from the mind. Creating from the mind is all about that. This is what I have to do as an artist. This is my path. I have to just decide and stick with it and go and practice and put on in those 10,000 hours or whatever in order to be a successful artist or validated one, an acknowledged artist. And this is creating from the mind. The mystical artist is going beyond that. It's ditching the mind, not letting the mind run the show. There's nothing wrong with the mind. The problem is that we let ourselves be guided by it. It's such a powerful tool, but it's not supposed to guide us. So the mystical artist knows how to go within and to find this uniqueness that they haven't even seen before. Like even when you are already a well-known artist or you have like a very defined style or whatever, you feel like you're already successful, there is always a next step for you. Where is the challenge coming from? And actually for successful artists or perceived as successful artists, it's easier to reach this plateau of, okay, I got here, what now? Like, it seems like nothing's really changing anymore. So how do I get out of that? And turning towards the energy side of it and not just the surface, like what's apparent, is always going to keep things interesting and challenging and creatively challenging, because that's how the mystical artist actually grows all the fucking time, because he or she is always taking on challenges, because that's what lights him or her up, that's what turns them on, that's what actually makes them tap and create, tap into their authentic self-expression, their most unique talent, which is not what you may think talent is. We're going to have an episode just for that. And they are able to create the unimaginable, meaning that it's not about creating sci-fi or anything, it's about creating something that they didn't even think possible, like creating things that makes so much sense at the end, but at the beginning they couldn't have known they would have gotten there. It's the type of creation that blows your own damn mind every fucking time. And it's so fascinating. And the mystical artist knows that and feels that that is truth. And that's what they yearn for all the time. Because that is true self-expression. Self-expression is not about staying in what you know how to do. It's about always leaping into the unknown, into the chaos, into the mist. So to be honest, darlings, I think this is all for today's episode. And yay, wrapped up the first episode. Cannot wait to see you on the next one. That's it, guys. Bye, darlings.